Welcome to Sable Island Conference 2021, a series of virtual presentations about the natural wonders and human history of this fascinating island. This is session 10, Visitor Experience on Sable Island, by Mathieu acting park manager for Sable Island National Park Reserve. I am April Henniger, chair of the board of directors for Friends of Sable Island, a volunteer-run charitable organization dedicated to the long-term protection of all things Sable Island. We've been holding a biannual conference since 2015 as a major fundraiser for our education programs and especially our annual scholarships. We had hoped to hold an in-person conference in 2021, but this proved too difficult with the pandemic restrictions. So we are happy to present Sable Island Conference 2021 virtually. Sable Island has a long history of human use stretching back over the centuries. Visitors often arrived to the island by chance due to shipwrecks or by choice as fishers, entrepreneurs, adventure-seeking travelers, researchers, and lifesavers. Accessing Sable Island is inherently challenging due to its remote offshore location and unpredictable environmental conditions such as fog, wind, and flooded landing conditions. Due to the island's unique coastal ecosystem, hosting several species at risk, wild horses, seals, seabirds, and various plant species, visitation to the island is carefully planned and implemented. Today, we will learn more about Parks Canada's approach to managing visitation to this special place. Presenter Mathieu is a graduate of Dalhousie University's Marine Affairs program and has a diverse background in the development of sustainable communities in New Brunswick. In 2016, Mathieu joined Parks Canada as National Historic Sites and Visitor Experience Manager, working for sites in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, including the Fort Beauséjour and Grand Pré National Historic Sites. He is thoroughly enjoying his current assignment as acting park manager for Sable Island National Park Reserve. Welcome, Mathieu, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, April. Thank you. Thanks to the Friends of Sable Island for inviting me here to talk to you today. My name is Mathieu, and I have the pleasure of being acting park manager for Sable Island National Park Reserve. I've been with the Sable Island team for the last 6 months, and it's a pleasure to talk to you about where the site is at in terms of visitor experience, the visitor experience program that's been building and evolving since Parks Canada took over the management of the island in 2013. A lot of you joining us today are probably aware of a lot of the island's main characteristics, but I thought I'd just do a brief overview for those that might not and those that may join later on by video as well. So we'll just kind of go through this quickly before diving into the VE. So Sable Island National Park Reserve is located off the coast of Nova Scotia in the North Atlantic Ocean. As you can see, it's about approximately 290 kilometers from Halifax, 170 kilometers for the closest point in Canso. And it's really on the edge of the continental shelf. As you can see, after Sable Island, it's where the ocean goes into the deep abyss. And in close proximity to the island as well is the Gully Marine Protected Area. The island itself is approximately 40 to 45 kilometers long. It's always kind of shifting on each of its eastern and western tip over the seasons. At the widest point, it's about 1.5 kilometers, and the highest point is 30 meters high, which would be Baldoon. Some of the other of the island's characteristics is, of course, it's one of Canada's furthest offshore islands. It has a population of wild horses, which there are approximately 500 on the island right now, which is probably the highest, amongst the highest that it's been since they've been there since the 1800s. Sorry, the 18th century, the 1700s. It's the world's largest breeding colony of gray seals. It's a delicate freshwater oasis in the middle of the sea. There's a freshwater lens that sits on top of a saltwater lens that makes life possible on the island. And for plants and animals alike. There are over 190 species of plants and 350 recorded species of birds. It's the only known nesting area of the Ipswich sparrow in the world. And there are other endemic species found nowhere else on the planet on Sable Island. And since it's located in the middle of major shipping lanes, it's been known as the graveyard of the Atlantic before the age of modern navigational tools. There are over 350 shipwrecks that happened since 1583, and those we'd say that are really known wrecks. And this gave way to the birth of Canada's first life-saving station in 1801. So there's a long history of human presence on the island. So I've been working with the Sable Island team for the past 6 months, and the first question that people always ask when I tell them I'm working for Sable Island is, can you visit the island? And the answer is yes. Visiting Sable Island is an opportunity that fits within Parks Canada's mandate to protect and present Canada's natural and cultural heritage while maintaining ecological and commemorative integrity. And it's also part of Sable Island's management plan to develop carefully managed opportunities for people to visit and experience the island. Visiting the island gives a chance for people to have a greater understanding of this special place, and also fosters a sense of shared stewardship for its protection. And so the second question that people usually ask when they're interested about Sable Island is okay, you can visit Sable Island, so how do you get there? So there are multiple ways to get to Sable Island. There are 4 main ways to get there. By sea, if you have your own private vessel, sailboat, you can go and sail up to Sable Island. You can contact Parks Canada to book a tentative landing date, because all of these different ways to getting to the island are all regulated by Parks Canada, are all managed by Parks Canada. So smaller vessels will typically anchor offshore close by and do 1 day or multiple day trips to the island that people will come in ashore by Zodiac. Another way to come by sea is by expedition cruise ship, where people can book a seat in advance. Per year, there are usually 1 to 4 cruise ships, expedition style cruise ships. It's not those huge liners that you'll see down south and elsewhere in the world. So these will typically have approximately 200, 300 people in that range. And they will also anchor out offshore and access the island by Zodiacs or dinghies. Another way to access the island is with outfitters. There are 2 outfitters that operate out of Halifax, which are Katuk Expeditions and Picture Perfect Tours. You can call them up. They've got certain dates that are reserved in the island's calendar during the summer season. You can book them, and if they have room, you can book a seat for a flight. And they will be coming to the island by air providers, either fixed wing or helicopter, which would be out of Halifax, mainly Sable Aviation and Vision Air. You can also book your own private charter if you like. You can call Parks Canada. The reservation dates usually start in mid-January if you're looking at getting a date to book your own group to go out and take care of contacting the air providers directly afterwards to figure out what date can work for you, and to make sure that everybody shows up there to hop on the plane. For the air providers, I mentioned Sable Aviation and Breton Air, Vision Air, but there's also Breton Air that operates out of Sydney and also services cabin links to Sable Island. And both Sable Aviation and Breton Air also do their own charters. So you can also call them and see if they have just individual seats for you to get to the island. And all of these visits are day trips. So there are presently there's no opportunity to do an overnight visit to the island for visitors. And it is important to note also that delays and cancellations are quite frequent because of weather. In the summertime, the weather is a lot more stable, and last summer was quite successful. But due to its geographic location, Sable Island can be subject to stormy weathers or fog, so that air carriers may not be able to land in some instances. And also the same for expedition cruise ships. If surf conditions are too high, but it may be too difficult for them to land a dinghy to bring it ashore. So it's always something to have flexibility in your flight plans or travel plans when getting to Sable Island. So getting there, this is a picture of a Sable Aviation flight landing on Sable. Sable Island is a registered aerodrome, but essentially the plane lands on the beach. It's actually the former lake bed of Lake Wallace, which is this quite expansive sand flat. And it's quite interesting because when you land on Sable Island, for those who've been there can tell you, you feel really like you're walking into another world when you can see that vast expanse of sand. Here's a picture of a Visionaire flight landing near main station on the helicopter pad. When people land here, they'll be starting their journey usually towards the west, and I'll talk about that a bit more about where people go when they're there in a couple of minutes. And here's a picture of an expedition ship landing on the beach. So as mentioned, on some occasions we've seen some expedition ships arrive, anchor offshore, and not be able to land because of surf conditions. But as you can see on this image, the waters around Sable Island can also be very calm. Or as I've seen often, you'll see the south side being with very large surf, with the north side a lot more calm. So there are options when when ships come in to land on the calmest side possible. So what will people do when they do arrive to Sable? What is usually offered is a guided tour by one of the outfitters, or a Parks Canada guide that will take you out and talk about the flora, the fauna, the cultural history, and everything there is to see on the island. It's a very dynamic place. There's lots of things to talk about. So people will usually set off on foot. If they land by plane on the beach, they'll set off from there. And if they land by helicopter at the main station, they'll set off from there, usually exploring towards West Light, walking along the coast and coming back on a different route. Here you can see visitors walking a bit inside of the dunes, most likely walking on horse paths that are scattered throughout the island. And another popular spot for visitors to visit also is Baldoon, which is an area where we'll often see cruise ships land for people to explore. If we take a quick snapshot of visitation to Sable Island National Park Reserve from 2014 to 2020, we can see that there was really a spike in numbers in 2017, 2018, 2019, and of course, a drop in 2020 with COVID. Approximately 75% of all visitation to the island is through the cruise ships, because on a given day you could have 200 people. So that can really boost the numbers. The numbers overall for a season are still relatively low when you compare it to other national parks. We're talking in the 400 to 500 visitors range, so it's still relatively limited. So you can see that with the drop in 2020, because we didn't have the cruise ships, in 2021 neither, but there should be coming back this year. But we did have an increase in 2021 in flights with the addition of a few flights during the week. So it has been growing again. So we have a couple of cruise ships planned for the season. So it'll be interesting to see how the season rolls out. So like we said, Parks Canada is looking to provide opportunities to visit Sable Island in a responsible way, of course, to minimize the impact that we have on the fragile and relatively pristine ecosystem. So I'll kind of go through some of the main guidelines and rules and regulations that we have for visitors when visiting the island. The first one will be leave only footprints, take only pictures. In national parks, it is illegal to collect rocks, shells, animal specimens, plants, or cultural artifacts. So you can walk on the beach, see things, pick them up, take a look at them, but you have to leave them where you find them. You can't take any of these objects back with you. Of course, it's to protect the, there are cultural artifacts that we want to be maintained for future studies, and the same goes for plants, shells, etc., that either they have a role to play in the ecosystem. Keep the wildlife wild. So here we're talking mainly about horses, seals, and birds. For horses, that if you're visiting the island, you're almost guaranteed that you will see horses and seals because they are prevalent throughout the island, and they do have seasonal shifts. For both horses and seals, there are guidelines to maintain a distance of at least 20 meters from them to make sure that they can stay wild, that you're not disturbing their feeding behavior, reproductive behavior, or you're not kind of shying them away from valued habitat or habitat that they prefer. So that's very important. In the case of seals, of course, as well, they can have aggressive behavior, especially during the mating season. But I mean, that's in the winter. In the wintertime, in the summertime, they're a bit more calm, and they will tend to head to the water as soon as they see visitors. But it's still just for a caution of not wanting to disturb wildlife, and also for visitor safety. For birds, there are tern colonies and gull colonies as well that are off limits, that should not visitors are not allowed to get near. And also tern colonies is definitely a place where you don't want to go, because terns will actually kind of dive bomb you, dive bomb your head, and can actually peck at your head, and so they can display quite aggressive behavior if you approach a tern colony. There are several species at risk that are present on Sable Island, notably the roseate tern and the Ipswich sparrows. So we'll be trying to avoid, of course, those colonies where they can be present. And in the case of the Ipswich sparrow, they'll be nesting in the hearth. So that's why we want people to stay on the horse path. So we want you to watch where you step for different animal species such as the Ipswich sparrow, but also to avoid, damaging rare plants that are emerging, and some vegetation as well can take a while to grow. So that's why I encourage people to use existing horse paths or bare sand. Another policy to protect the island's and ecological integrity is to pack and pack out. Visitors are required to pack out all of their garbage that's brought to the island, and littering is strictly prohibited. We'll even see larger expedition type ships that will come in that will actually bring their own portable toilets, mini portable toilets, and they'll have to pack that out with them when they leave. A few other visitor rules and guidelines. There is a mandatory safety briefing for all that do visit the island. This is, of course, to kind of deliver this message of how to protect this fragile environment, and also to make sure that people stay safe. The island is remote, it's far away, so we want to avoid people getting hurt, because it can be challenging to get people out. Guided walks by park staff or approved third party are our policy as well, that we want at least people, even people that are coming on a private vessel, we want them to have an initial guided walk, just so that to give them the orientation, so that they know where they are, and they have a general sense of what areas should be respected of the island, and to have a safe visit. Another policy that we have is no more than 100 visitors on island at a time. And here we're mainly talking about cruise ships, where you could have a larger group. We want to keep the group sizes manageable. And even in a size of, if we'd have a group of 100 landing on the beach, we'd split them up into smaller groups of 15 to make sure that you can stay on the paths. You can walk on the sand to minimize the impact, and also to make sure that people can have a good experience while visiting the island. All landings are approved and scheduled. I'd mentioned that before, just to make sure that things can be managed in a reasonable way. And also to make sure that usually we'll have no more than one group on the island at a time, meaning that if there's a cruise ship landing, we won't have any other landings at the same time. So this, of course, just to give the Parks Canada staff an opportunity to do a good job in the orientation and welcoming people to the island. There are also biosecurity measures where peoples that actually visit the island, they'll have their boots scrubbed and sanitized with bleach before landing there, to reduce the chance of pathogens arriving on the island or disease that could, for instance, be dangerous for the horse population. And there are also strict measures that if you've actually visited a horse farm, well, you shouldn't be bringing the same footwear to the island, because it could have an impact on the population of horses. And the last to mention is the sensitive cultural sites that are on island as well. Areas such as the former Life Saving Station number 3, where there are a lot of cultural objects that will pop out due to erosion. So some areas are really off limits for visitors that come to the island, and this is another way to protect the island's cultural heritage. So I think I think that's it. I wanted to do a quick overview of Sable Island National Park Reserve, and for those of you who would want more information, don't hesitate to visit Sable Island National Park Reserve's webpage, where there are a lot of answers to your questions. Lots of information is on there on the island and the island's history. And don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to have more information with Parks Canada. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you, Mathieu, for taking the time to present to us today on a topic of great interest to those who want to protect Sable Island and those who want to visit. It seems especially critical to carefully balance these two mandates for Sable Island National Park Reserve. For those watching the recording, if you enjoyed this presentation, please consider a small charitable donation towards our scholarship program. For those attending the live session, we will stop recording now and take some questions.